Now, the UK Open, very hard tournament to win. For me, the hardest tournament to win because you've got everybody in it. The UK Open you can't prepare. And I didn't think personally that would be something that suits Luke Littler. And it's another title. And for me, that is probably one of the most impressive ones because it answers a big question about Luke Littler.
Hello, welcome along to the Tungsten Talk here at the MODUS Super Series, the latest edition here on Pluto TV, where we're having a look back at the UK Open at Butlins Minehead as Luke Littler added another major trophy to the collection, beating James Wade by 11 legs to 2 in the final at the famous Butlins Minehead resort. For Luke Littler, that increases his major championship tally after picking up the World Championship crown at the beginning of 2025. James was looking for a fourth UK Open crown, but did manage to beat the world number one, Luke Humphries, in the quarterfinals as the machine looks to continue his resurgence within the sport. Plenty of headliners and plenty of big names went crashing out early. Some made deep runs. There's also the odd upset or two, as you'd expect at this famous tournament. Matthew Edgar has played at the UK Open. Now, it's a fun one to watch. What's it like to play in?
Same description. It's a fun one to play in. It's exciting. Now, I've played in it at various different years at various different times. 10 times in total I've played at the UK Open. And every time you go, there's sort of a different journey, a different path, a different sort of excitement. The first time you go, you want one thing to happen. And my first one was in 2011. I'm like, I want Phil Taylor, You want that big game. You want to be up on the main stage. Then when you're in the midst of it, you're battling for ranking points. You kind of go, oh, I kind of want the better draw now. But general rule of thumb as sort of a player, sort of mid-ranked where I was, you sort of go in it and there's two things you want. You either want the big marquee game where in the modern day it would be a Luke Littler, a Luke Humphries, where you're going to be up on the main stage in front of the big crowd playing that televised game, or you want the easiest draw going. The worst ones to get are when you pull a player like, say, Josh Rock, Michael Smith, where they are at the moment, where you know you're going to be playing a real top world-class elite dart player, but you're going to be playing on board 4 up in the multi-board room.
What's the difference between Bolton and Minehead? Because you played at both venues. Obviously, Bolton, it was all in one room. Obviously, Minehead split up in different rooms. How does that change the dynamic of things, or how has it changed the dynamic of things?
It changes quite a lot, and it was only really when I was looking into this UK Open that I realised we've actually had more UK Opens now in Minehead than we have at Bolton. And I still believe that the UK Open, in my mind, is at Bolton, but that was 12 years ago now, 2013, the very last instalment at the Reebok. And to play in it, it was very different. There was a lot of noise. You know, you could be playing on your board, you can hear the scores coming out on the main board, you can hear all the calls from the boards a bit further down. I would say now it feels a little bit more, certainly boards 3 to 8, feels a bit more like a Pro Tour, but with a little bit of cheering. Because still you've got to have consideration for the other boards around, where when it was all in one room, you didn't really have that. Stage 2, I like the addition of that. A bit before, it did have a bit more feel about it. Now it's got its own room. Not really a room I've personally got on with too well over time. But also as a player, it's managing that well. We saw years ago Cameron Menzies get timed out at the UK Open. That's because he played on the main stage, stage 1, and then he was due on boards 3 to 8. Now, every stage and every room has its own practice section, and you have to be within that practice area. Now, Cameron obviously didn't know that at the time, so it gives you more things to have to manage. You have to be aware of the layout. You have to be aware, certainly on that Friday, where you're going to be jumping room to room, not just board to board. So it gives you a little bit more to have to consider.
Which one did you prefer, Bolton, Minehead?
It's a very common question. I asked this question myself to James Wade last weekend in an interview, and he said Bolton. And everybody else I've asked, or anyone I speak to that played at Bolton, always say the same thing. Bolton. Yes, the room was smaller, but the atmosphere will never be replicated in darts ever again.
Is it like an old school football ground? Everton are moving out of Goodison Park at the end of this year, and everyone's talking about all the memories that's been had there, the old school ground, the old school feel that maybe when we've seen football clubs move stadium, you can't quite replicate. Is there a similar feeling with the UK Open that, and Minehead is an incredible arena. It's a great place to watch darts. This is not a slant on that as a venue at all. But because you're so used to the memories of Bolton and because there was just something iconic about it, even after so many years, is it still difficult to adjust?
I think it's got its own feel now. It feels like a different tournament. It feels like a different environment. The closest we ever got to replicating that again was in the COVID year when we played at Milton Keynes. And that was very similar where it was all sort of in one room. You'll never replicate Bolton. And the thing is, we sit here and I'll try and describe it. And I can talk about the atmosphere and I can talk about how it was very different. The balcony for the players, where you could be having a practice, and every time I was getting closer and due to play, I'd just work along the practice boards to get closer to the edge of the balcony so I could see over and see what was going on at the time. And it was just exciting. And like you remember watching the game on the main stage and you could see the games going on in the background and you'd be like, oh, Andy Smith's getting on board 4 now. And imagine that now in the world of Darts Connect, where you could go, right, let me go see how he's getting on. You know, we always wanted to see the red button, didn't we? And we always wanted to see that little bit more. We've now got that with streaming platforms and things now. So it's going the way we wanted it to. But I think anyone who's played at Bolton and you ask them that question, they're going to give you the same answer, that I think Bolton is just that little bit of magic.
So was the practice room then upstairs? So you could literally glance over from the practice room of the old venue and then look down at the matches then?
You could see it all. The only things you couldn't see was board 2, because that was underneath the balcony. And where the view was from like the players' area, you'd miss board 3.
Because it's in the corner, wasn't it?
It's in the corner around the side. But as you sort of start to work down, so you could sort of see the boards all the way down the side and obviously over the main stage as well. And yeah, it was a great sight. And then the production was over the other side. So your goal was always to try and make sure you get taken over there for some form of interview or something. It really was tight though. And that's the issue. There was only so much you could fit in there. And when you put those boards in the early rounds, we certainly won't be having the prize money we've got now if it stayed there. You look at the prize money, which was for the total tournament when it first started, when Phil Taylor picked up the title. When we look at that, Luke Littler this past weekend picked up nearly that whole prize fund in one place.
The move was necessary, the move was needed. How would you describe the Minehead tournament identity then?
Oh, it still has a FA Cup of Darts feel. Still has that. But when you're comparing it like for like, if you compare it to Bolton, it's not the same. If you compare it in its own entity, if you look at it as its own individual tournament, you go, what a tournament. Probably my favourite one to watch of the year, as it is for a lot of people. I've certainly seen that on social media across the week. So when we look at the UK Open in that sense, yes, it's a magical event still. It's only when you compare it against the two. Now, the one downside I see with the Minehead is you have to be on site. You have to pay to be on site. Now, let's say there's 6,000 tickets available. You can't sell more than that, even though there's more than 6,000 spaces available on the early rounds, because you've got stage 1, stage 2, and then 3 to 8. So the one downside I do see of that is you do kind of get some empty arenas or empty rooms at times. Certainly on Friday, stage 1, everyone wants to be in ball 3 to 8. So you do kind of get that sort of quieter vibe about it. But what it does do is when you get to finals day, it provides one of the most magical environments. I've played on stage 1 at Minehead in the evening sessions, and the only way I think I can describe it is exactly like Paul Nicholson put out after he played there. He put out on his social media, because I've never felt more like a rock star in my life. And that's what that stage does. And it's a very different environment as well. That stage is so far set away from the crowd. Even though you can hear them, you never see them. Because where the lights are, how deep it is between the crowd and where the stage is. If you're walking back with your head, you've seriously got to get your head up to look to see anybody. So it's an incredible environment to play in. That's why we see a lot of big averages on that stage.
You played the behind closed doors year, the frozen off one. What was that like?
The 2018
Beast from the East.
2018 Beast of the East, yeah. Wow. It was an experience. So we're travelling down there. They closed the road getting into Minehead. We got on the road with about 3 minutes to spare. Now, that road normally takes you about 30 minutes or so to get down. It took us near enough 6 hours that day. There was tractors out pulling people out of ditches with snow. It was terrible. At one point, we thought about leaving it and walking. And the reason I went, I wasn't going to go. I wouldn't have gone any other year. But the reason we went is because that year I was a seed. We had to qualify, and I got into the top 32. So I was seeded. So I was like, I'm going because I'm seed. I'm not missing out on being a seed. So we headed down there. The afternoon session was tough for people. There was no heating. The pipes had frozen. You go to the toilet, there was a sheet of ice on the water in there. Me and the missus was laid in bed with the heating on full, we had the blanket on, we had a throw on, and the wind was whistling down the road that we were shivering in bed. We couldn't get warm. It was impossible to be warm. And we'll walk down to the venue, snow up to the knees, to the point where you had to step out of the snow. You couldn't just walk through it. You had to sort of like climb.
Trudge, like almost like Saint from Everest or something like that.
Yeah, get your knees up sort of thing. And with that, it made the walk so much longer. So what would normally be a 5-minute walk became a 25-minute walk. And, you had to have gloves on with hand warmers in to try and keep your hands warm. It was a battle. It was interesting. And obviously it was a different dynamic. Now, this is where it got fun, though, because you get this, when you get changes in scenarios, you get that thing where everyone goes, but it's the same for everyone. No, it is the same for everyone, but not everyone deals with things the same. Some people love cold, some people love hot. Some people will struggle with cold. Some people have things like arthritis, which is triggering in cold. So I thought there's an advantage here that if I can adapt, I can do quite well in this tournament. And yeah, I did manage to pick off a nice few wins in that one.
Luke Littler beat James Wade 11 legs to 2 in the final at Butlins in Minehead. Now, it's just another one to his collection, isn't it?
It's possibly one of the biggest batterings as well we've seen in a final. Terry Jenkins won 1 leg back in the day. James Wade now second place with just the 2. Now, the UK Open, very hard tournament to win. For me, the hardest tournament to win because you've got everybody in it. We look at events like the World Match Play. Okay, you've got the top 16 and the top 16 informed players. We've got the cream of the crop. But we've got everybody in the UK Open. Not only that's the scheduling. The ability to have to play multiple games across a day where preparation is tough. I talk about this quite a lot, where I remember one session ran quite long at the UK Open. It ran to about just before 6 o'clock. They did the draw. Broadcast starts at 7. They're not going to change the broadcast time to suit us as the players. So it's got to 6 o'clock. They've done the draw. Draw's finished about 6:15. We've got 45 minutes till the broadcast starts. So now it's a case of, I could be on in 45 minutes. I could be on in 4 hours. So what do? Do you go and practice? Do you prepare? Or do you sit around and wait for the scheduling to come out? Because actually, if you start practicing, you're on in 4 hours, you have to stop again. So then I've got to stop, start all the time. So you're constantly refreshing the page because as players, we don't get any extra information. We get what comes out on PDC TV. So you sat there refreshing it all the time, checking the social platforms to see when you're on, when that scheduling is. And then it comes through at 6:30. Oh, you're on at 7 o'clock. Right, you've got 30 minutes to get ready. So it's very hard in that sense to manage a day. At least with things like the World Championship. You play one game. You might be off for 2 or 3 days. You know what time you're on. So it's easier to prepare. The UK Open, you can't prepare. And I didn't think personally that would be something that suits Luke Littler because he is someone who's quite laid back and sort of just takes things in his stride. But with that, when the event is also in that sense, opposites repel, No, opposites attract, don't they?
Opposites attract.
Yeah.
I mean, they sometimes do repel as well, admittedly. And when they do repel, boy, do they repel.
Things that are the same repel. And if you're relaxed and the event is very relaxed, then it's going to, repel, you'd expect. Where I thought it suits someone who's a little bit more like a Connor Scott, a Ryan Searle.
Structured.
Once they start, they've started. Mm-hmm. And they're not stopping until it's over. Where I thought Luke dipping in and out, but it worked brilliantly. He was incredible. And it's another title. And for me, that is probably one of the most impressive ones because it answers a big question about Luke Littler.
And he hammered James in the final. 9-0 up. There was a possibility that James could have been whitewashed, and that just doesn't happen. Not in leg play finals.
No, not to James Wade either, because James Wade's just so methodical, always there. But we're seeing a different side to James Wade, I think, in recent times. We talked about the interview we conducted just last week, and he was talking in that about how sort of if he doesn't win something else, he thinks he's let himself down. And I saw the backlash of that. There's a lot of people I like to sort of, anything if I've worked on something, I like to see the feedback that people are providing. And there was a lot of people be quite derogatory to James Wade, which I found was quite weird. Because essentially it's not what Dave from Huddersfield thinks about James Wade. It's what James Wade thinks about James Wade. And if James Wade believes he can go win another title, he can go win another title. It's only when he believes he can't that we're sort of going to see that he's not. And now to get that belief straight away in reaching a major final, I think it's going to be an interesting 2025.
I was going to mention that, look, the game itself didn't go to plan, but you look at some of the performances on Rue. He beat Luke Humphries, really good semi-final performance as well. Was there indicators and signs that James, who, let's be honest, that the last 6 months or so, we haven't seen too much from, has been struggling to qualify for things like the match play Grand Prix, he's had to wait last minute, where perhaps times it's been more comfortable. Is there signs that he's trending once again in the correct direction?
You get a kick up the backside if it's really what you want. And this is all James Wade knows. This is his life. From a very young age, he's been associated and been a dart player. Now, when you get to January and you get your diary out, James Wade will go, right, when's the World Match Play on? It's on that week. When's the Grand Prix on? It's on that week. When's the World Championship? That week. And he just got used to that being his life. Match plays on, I'll book the week off because that's in there. I'm not going to take any exhibitions, do any bookings. It's match play week. And then when it comes round to about April, May time, and all of a sudden you might not be in the World Match Play, something he's not had to worry about for a very long period of time, you start to realise what you've got and what you might be about to lose. And I think that's really what's good for James Wade at the moment, in the fact that he's sort of giving that little bit of a reality check that darts waits for no one. You know, you look back a couple of years ago, people that was reaching the UK Open semi-final, Adam Gavlas, semi-finalist, not even got a tour card anymore. Richie Burnett, quarter-finalist, no tour card. And, you know, darts waits for no one in that sense. So I think James Wade probably saw that it's now or never.
Luke Littler answered a lot of questions, as you mentioned. Is there a slight worry, though, that the way that he was able to almost at times, with the exception really of the Peter Wright game, just able to breeze through the draw?
I think the worry there is for everybody else who's trying to achieve anything in this sport, because Luke Littler looks destined to be the world number one come the start of 2026. Unless Luke Humphries can go and pick the world championship up, it looks almost certain that Littler's going to be taking that number one spot. Depending how the year goes, he could take it before then, because Luke Humphries is defending money. Mm-hmm. Luke Littler isn't. He goes to the World Match Play, it's free. He goes to the Grand Prix, it's free. Grand Slam, it's free. So everything he wins is going to be closing that gap all the time, where Luke Humphries is potentially going to be dropping money off. So I think the worry here is that I don't think it's going to be as long as a Van Gerwen, as a Phil Taylor run, because I don't think Luke Littler's going to be within darts for a very long period of time. But I do think we're getting to an era of dominance which we never thought we was going to get.
What do you mean by era of dominance we never thought we were going to get?
When we go to tournaments, we haven't had a favourite for a long... We've had favourite, but we haven't had a clear favourite. I look at the odds now, and I look at the odds for the World Championship. He's 6-5 favourite, as things stand. So nearly even money. Next one's 7-2. After that, we're looking nearly 10-1. So I remember Phil Taylor going into tournaments odds on, Michael Van Gerwen going into tournaments odds on. We are so close to Luke Littler being odds on for the World Championship. And when did we think that would ever happen again? When you talk about the depth in darts now, you talk about the talent pool that's available. I thought those days was well and truly gone and would never see it again. Luke Humphries came close to doing that, and when you look at the dominance he's had, he's nearly got £2 million in prize money, and the titles that he's won, and still the odds compilers are going 7-2. So just look at how highly they regard Luke Littler and how scared they are in really taking any sort of odds on him. So I do think he's going to go odds on, and the second that happens, we've got a new generational leader.
In terms of Josh Rock, was that a real step in the right direction this weekend, getting to the semi-finals?
I've said this many times that the guy to watch in 2025 is Josh Rock. I think he's going to win one. I think he'll win one. The reason for that, Josh Rock, when we look at him, he burst onto the scene, didn't he? He really did. And then took a step back. Now, I watch throws. I analyse things. It's part of my job. And with that, I noticed that there was a technical flaw in the Josh Rock throw. When he pulled the dart back, he paused, he hesitated. He then started to play with the dart in the fingers. He started to push on the dart, changing the angle. Now, I thought this is the start and the development, potentially, of dartitis. That's how I saw it. And it grew and it became more concerning. It became more sticky. And I thought, maybe Josh Rock's not the guy. And then I saw him play a game on the Pro Tour 1 this year. And I watched him and went, oh, he's got his throwback. He's fluent, he's free, he's playing. And I thought, I wonder if this stays. And when I looked at the average 105, I thought, oh, that's good. I'll watch him again tomorrow. I'll watch him against Beau Greaves. Quality game. He lost that, great game. And then he's someone who's really caught my eye because he's playing with freedom and fluency again. And he went into the UK Open. He was on my list of 5 players to watch. Reached the semi-finals. He'll be happy with that. But I think he's going to win something this year. I really do. Anything from a European tour up.
In terms of the tournament itself, what would be your overall synopsis?
The big boys are back. 2024 was the year of the underdog. We had surprise winners, shock winners, players outside the top 32 making deep runs to the point where I believe it was Mickey Mansell at the Grand Slam of Darts. If he won that tournament, he got to the semi-final. If he won it, he still wouldn't have been in the top 32. Just to show like how far off the pace people were that was reaching the major event finals last year. We look at the quarterfinals, lowest ranked player was 25. So all within the top 32, 6 of which was in the top 16 of the world. So, and that's in an open draw. That's not because they've had seeded protection. That's just because they're performing better than everybody else. We look at Gerwyn Price, who went out early in that event to Connor Scott. Look at the performance he's been putting in this year. He's getting back to form. I think what we're going to see in 2025 is normality resume in regards to those seeds being protected.
Matt, thank you. Thank you for watching the latest edition of the Tungsten Talk series here on Pluto TV.